The day I found out I no longer existed, I was sitting in a conference room I had designed, built for, and bled for, watching another man sign his name to everything I created. 6 investors. A glass table. A deal worth more money than I'd ever seen in one place. And not a single line of paperwork with my name on it. My partner, Marcus Hale, slid the pen across the table and signed without blinking. Without hesitating. Without looking at me once. That's when I understood something that took me too long to learn. A man who can betray you that smoothly? He didn't decide to do it that morning. He'd been planning it for a very long time. 3 years earlier, Marcus and I were nobodies with a whiteboard and a stupid amount of coffee. We met at a startup weekend in Austin. He was charm and vision, the kind of guy who could sell water to the ocean. I was the builder. The one who stayed until 3 a.m. making the product actually work. We split everything 50-50. Signed, witnessed, filed. We had a deal that felt like a friendship and a friendship that felt like armor. First year was brutal. I built the product. I hired the engineers. I wrote the code that clients would eventually pay millions to use. Marcus pitched. Marcus networked. Marcus made everyone in every room feel like we were already winning. We were a machine. The night we signed our first major client, we sat on the floor of our empty office with pizza boxes and talked about what we'd do when we made it. He said, "I couldn't do this without you." I believed him. That was my first mistake. It started small, the way a crack in a wall always does. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Just a quick investor coffee, nothing formal. A pitch deck I found on the shared drive with my name changed to technical advisor. Legal calls he took in the hallway, voice low, door half closed. I brought it up once. He laughed. "That's just a draft. Don't be paranoid." So I backed down. Because when someone has been in the trenches with you, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You protect the relationship. What I didn't know was that while I was protecting the relationship, Marcus was restructuring the company. Quietly. Surgically. New shareholder documents. New operating agreements. New clauses slipped between paragraphs of contracts he told me were standard updates. I signed what he put in front of me. Every single time. And every single time I signed, I handed him a little more of what I'd built. Back in that conference room. Marcus in the hallway. Me, ice cold, 2 words ready. "Where's my name?" He straightened his jacket. Paused. Then looked me dead in the eye and said, "I've been meaning to talk to you about the direction of the company. Not a denial. Not an apology. A pivot." He told me I was too operational. That investors wanted a cleaner story. That my equity had been diluted legally, technically, per the documents I signed. He even used the word amicably. He hoped we could handle this amicably. I thought about every 70-hour week. Every crashed prototype I fixed at midnight. Every client I held onto through sheer force of will while he was out playing golf with investors. Then I said, very quietly, "You should have read the fine print on our original agreement, Marcus." Because I did. He smiled like he'd already won. He hadn't even begun to lose yet. I'm not going to pretend the week after was some cinematic moment of strength. It wasn't. It was cereal for dinner. It was staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. wondering how you hand someone everything and end up holding nothing. But somewhere between the grief and the fury, I did one thing that changed everything. I started reading. Every document. Every email. Every contract from 3 years of building that company printed, spread across my kitchen floor, read line by line until my eyes burned. And buried in a second-year contract addendum, tucked between 2 boring paragraphs like it was nothing, I found a clause. A clause Marcus had inserted himself. A clause that referenced an earlier provision in our original agreement that he'd never formally amended. Under those original terms, any restructuring of equity required written consent from both founding partners. He had restructured without it. In one sentence, buried in paperwork he assumed I'd never read, Marcus had accidentally handed me everything I needed to take it all back. I hired Renata Cruz the next morning. 15 years of contract litigation. The kind of lawyer who reads 200 pages and says 4 words that hit like a verdict. She said, he made one mistake. That clause made every later document I'd signed legally questionable, obtained under misrepresentation. The legal word for that is fraud. We filed within the week. But I didn't stop there. Marcus had built his entire investor pitch around our product's story. His story. The visionary founder who built something from nothing. So quietly, without noise, I reached out to every engineer I'd hired. Every client I'd brought in. I didn't ask them to take sides. I just shared the facts and let people draw their own conclusions. The truth doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs the right audience at the right time. The Series S signing was scheduled for a Friday. Wednesday morning, Marcus received the legal filing. I wasn't there. But I heard he went completely white. That he spent the next 48 hours calling me. I didn't answer once. Friday came. The investors arrived. So did Renata. With a court-issued injunction freezing all company assets pending the fraud investigation. No signing. No deal. Everything on hold. 2 of 3 investors walked out within the hour. The third, the sharp woman in the gray suit from that first meeting, asked to meet me personally the following week. I walked past Marcus in the lobby on my way out. He was on the phone, voice tight, hands shaking slightly. He looked at me. I kept walking. I didn't need to say a word. We both already knew. 9 months later, the court ruled in my favor. My equity was restored. The restructuring was voided. Marcus paid back every cent he'd taken under the fraudulent arrangement. We settled. He bought my stake out at full market value, the real valuation, the one that included everything I'd built. It was a number I never would have seen if I'd accepted what he put in front of me in that hallway. I sat in my car afterward for a long time. Not celebrating. Not angry. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when something heavy finally lifts. The woman in the gray suit? Her name is Diana Wren. She called 3 weeks after the ruling and said, I know who built what. When you're ready, I want to be your first call. 6 months later, I made it. Here is what I know now. Marcus never would have needed to steal what I built if he believed he could match it. People who take credit are almost always the ones who know, privately, quietly, that they couldn't have done it alone. That's not comfort. But it is clarity. I also know this, everything he tried to erase survived anyway. The relationships. The knowledge. The ability to build something from nothing. None of that transfers in a legal document. The things that made me worth stealing from were still completely mine. Today, the company I built with Diana is operating in 14 cities. 42 people on the team, mostly builders, mostly people who know what it feels like to be underestimated. We have one rule: no one disappears from the work they did. If your hands were on it, your name is on it. Last year, someone told me Marcus was at a conference. That he'd described us as having a complicated history. That he'd said I was talented. I laughed. Not bitterly. Just genuinely, the way you laugh when something that used to hurt finally shrinks to its actual size. If you're watching this and someone is trying to write you out of your own story, keep the receipts. Know your contracts. And don't confuse loyalty with blindness. Because people can only erase you if you let them hold the pen. And you built the ink.